Hello from London. In this special programme, we're looking back at Queen Elizabeth II's life as a cultural icon.
Lady, please.
During her 70-year reign, the late monarch was the subject of countless portraits, artworks and photographs all over the world. And someone who painted an official portrait of the Queen is Nicky Philipps, who joins me now. Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for being here. Now, you actually painted 3 portraits of Elizabeth II over the past decade. How did it come about?
The first one was commissioned by Royal Mail for the Diamond Jubilee first-class stamp. And they needed a 6th, or they had 5 and they wanted a 6th, so I was brought in to do that. And that was the beginning of it.
She was the subject of dozens of portraits throughout her life. When you were painting her, did she seem to be tired of the process?
You would think so. The thing about her is that she wasn't someone who allowed herself to be bothered by the situation. You know, people say so many things about the Queen. You know, she's true to her faith, dedicated to the nation, calm, resolute, all these hardworking, all these wonderful tributes, all of which are true. But above all, I think the people who got it right were the ones who said that her attention to her duty. And the minute she made that pledge when she was 25, duty came first. And sitting with your portrait, eccentric though it may seem to some people in the age of photography, is part of it.
So what did you talk about?
Oh, all sorts of things, really. I mean, she tended to just rattle off stories about how the monarchy works, how it's interwoven with our system here. And then she'd often, she was incredibly funny and she had wonderful timing. And so there were a lot of stories about silly things that had happened. And of course, she met a lot of people, so, you know, a lot of anecdotes like that, really. And I was very lucky to be able to partake in some of them.
And what did she wear for your portraits?
That was commissioned by Royal Mail. So she wore the garter robes, which is the mantle, the dark blue velvet mantle of the garter robes, and the insignia involving the Garter Star, which is this enormous thing that's sat on her front here. And that's fun for an artist, actually, because there's a lot of colour in it and lots of different materials. And, you know, in the age of jeans and jumpers, to be able to be presented with something like that is much more fun.
Well, the Queen was, of course, a fashion icon, and she used clothes and colour to communicate with the people, as we see in our next report.
Through the decades of her rule, Queen Elizabeth never made a sartorial misstep. Even from her early years on the throne, her wardrobe didn't just express power and regal dignity, but an awareness clothes could carry a political message. At age 27, the Queen insisted her coronation dress incorporates symbolic emblems, not just from across the United Kingdom, but the entire Commonwealth. Ultimately, her style evolved over the years into what became a signature look. The bright colours, tailored coats, classic pearls, gloves and bags, not to mention her trademark architectural hats. Behind the scenes, more consideration went into the royal tailoring and millinery than the public ever suspected.
You've got to think of her age, the position, you have to think of photographing, but also getting in and out of cars. There's lots of things, a lot of practical things that we realise that you soon learn when you're working with Her Majesty.
In recent years, the public wondered if the Queen was still using fashion choices to make subtle political points, such as in 2017 when she opened Parliament for the first time after the Brexit referendum, wearing a hat that some noted resembled the EU flag. Or when she pinned on a brooch personally gifted to her by former US President Barack Obama on the day his successor Donald Trump arrived for his first presidential visit to the UK. As the public has increasingly fixated on the style choices of the latest generation of royal women, Queen Elizabeth's fashion remains influential.
Well, the Queen thought very carefully throughout her life about her image. How much input did she have in the painting that you did?
Well, the thing is, she didn't really have any input into that first one because, actually, any of the three I did, because it was commissioned that way. And the second one was for the Royal Company of Archers, who are her bodyguard in Scotland. So the robes changed, and it was then, the second one was painted in the robes of the Thistle, which are green, dark green. So I've basically painted her 3 times wearing robes. And she had some input into whether she should be wearing a tiara. We had a conversation about that because the garter robes for the first portrait, what goes with the garter is actually a rather floppy sort of black hat with a big feather out of it. And that would have taken up most of the stamp, so we decided to go without anything.
And how did you decide how you were going to capture the essence of the Queen?
I had 3 one-hour sittings, and as you can imagine, with the monarch, goes like that. So you just have to glean as much as you can when you're with her. I was really there to capture the colours, eye colours, skin colour, hair colour, because that's where I feel that the human eye has a bit of an edge on the camera, and I hope I'm not offending photographers across the world by saying that. And also I had her sitting next to me so I could get the dynamic, the feeling of that she was actually sitting there, which I think you can only capture when you have somebody literally next to you.
Well, the Queen never gave any interviews during her 70-year reign, and the intrigue into who she really was will continue for many years to come. Over the years, though, filmmakers have had a good go at trying to explain better to us who she was.
A life worthy of a film or two. Indeed, Queen Elizabeth II was the subject of many. Producers were drawn to the darker periods in her family life, like the death of Princess Diana, portrayed here in Spencer. And in The Queen, the 2006 film that won Helen Mirren an Oscar for her striking incarnation of the monarch. But if you ask visitors outside Buckingham Palace, the reference on most of their minds is hit series The Crown.
We learned to know her from The Crown, and well, we respect her now much more.
I thought she was a pretty cold person, but watching the series I started to like her.
It's a different way of getting to know the royals. I think for younger people, having a show can only be beneficial.
For the show's actresses, Olivia Colman and Claire Foy, showing the intimate life of Elizabeth II was a challenge, since she rarely broke her public facade. To get to the truth, producers often turn to specialists like Robert Lacey, who studied her life like an investigator. He spoke of her at the time of her jubilee.
The Queen is essentially a modest person, so she has an instinctive aversion to publicity about herself, and even though she's a professional person and understands that it is part of her job, it is not something she enjoys.
In 70 years on the throne, Elizabeth II made rare appearances with on-screen British icons.
Good evening, Your Majesty.
Like 007, played by Daniel Craig, complete with a parachute jump into the Olympic Stadium for the opening ceremony of the 2012 London Games. An unforgettable moment, especially for the stuntman who played the Queen's double.
I get involved at this point here. So this was live over the stadium. I jumped first, followed by a friend of mine, Mark. And then this is me here. I can tell that because I can see the pink of my wonderful dress that I was wearing.
Thank you for having me.
But there would be time for one last appearance with another darling of British TV, when the Queen took part in a sketch with Paddington Bear to mark her Platinum Jubilee.
Happy Jubilee, ma'am. And thank you for everything.
That's very kind.
We've heard a lot about how the Queen was very curious. We're obviously very intrigued by her, but she was very intrigued by people. Did you find that? Did she ask you lots of questions?
Funnily enough, she didn't actually, Eve, because I think she realised I was up against it. And it was much, much more interesting anyway. I mean, from my point of view, I wanted her to talk. It gives a picture, a bit of vibrancy. If people are moving around, you get more information about how they look their best, whether they tilt their head as they're talking. So I was really much more interested in her talking. You don't feel you can ask anything too intrusive. I asked her quite a lot of historical questions, things about the history of the royal family as much as I knew. She told me quite a bit about her uncle, Edward VIII, who abdicated. She was quite keen to sort of impart that knowledge, and it was lovely. Gosh, I was very lucky to be part of that, really.
Nicky, when your portrait was finished, did you get a reaction from the palace, from the Queen?
I got a reaction after my second one, actually, because that was actually unveiled at a party they had up at Archer's Hall in Edinburgh. And she came and said, oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I understand she was happy with the one for Royal Mail because it had her dogs in it, and it's now hanging in the throne room at Buckingham Palace. So I have to assume she didn't dislike it.
And as a portrait painter, as an artist, what do you think the first portrait of King Charles III will be like?
Well, I'd like to think that it would be mine. I'm terribly keen to paint the King. I think he's very expressive.
Well, keep in touch. If it is, we'll chat again.
Okay, by all means.
Nicky Philipps, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us at home. See you next time.
Never mind.